Madhusudan Saraswati, who was one of the greatest commentators on the Bhagavad Gita, is the great Vedanta, post-Shankara Vedanta teacher. And his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita is justifiably celebrated. He wrote it about 500 years ago. It's called the Gudhartha Deepika, a lamp that illumines the hidden teaching or the hidden essence. In that, he says, the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. You are that reality. Yeah, which is basically the teaching of the Upanishads. If you see all of Vedanta, if you want to boil it down to one sentence, it would be Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. What is that? You have to look to the Upanishad for that. What is that? And Madhusudan Saraswati says the entirety of the Bhagavad Gita, it can be described in that one sentence, Tat Tvam Asi. And the 18 chapters can be divided on that basis. Chapters 1 to 6 is Tvam, you. And chapters 7 to 12 is Tat, that. And chapters 13 to 18, they tell us about that grand identity. You are that. The essential teaching of the Upanishads, of Vedanta, is you are that, Tattvamasi. And the Gita, the first 6 chapters, concerns you. The question, who am I? What am I? That's the question. And the question, the pursuit of self-knowledge. And then the next 6 chapters, 7 to 12, the middle, the 1/3 of it, concerns that, God, the ultimate reality. The entire universe, there is an underlying power or a power which is immanent and transcendent in this universe, that. And then the unique teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Upanishads, of Vedanta, the last 6 chapters, you are that. Now obviously this is a very broad picture. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita, it's not as neat or as geometrically clean as this. But there is a truth to it. Especially if you look at the middle 6 chapters, from chapters 7 to 12, it is devotional, it is theistic, it is about God. And the initial teachings in the 2nd chapter, it is about the Atman. When Krishna teaches Arjuna that the Atman is not born, it does not die, that your real nature is not something that's born with the birth of the body, it does not die with the death of the body, and so on. So self-knowledge. In the 13th chapter, Sri Krishna brings it all together. For the first time, very explicitly, the teaching of you are that ultimate reality, it comes out so clearly in the 13th chapter. In the first verse of the 13th chapter, by the way, we were just discussing in the car today, the 13th chapter has an accounting problem. I said, Gita has 700 verses, but 13th chapter throws a spanner in the works, because there seems to be an extra verse there, an errant verse in the 13th chapter. It begins with a question by Arjuna, and the question is basically a list of the topics discussed in the chapter. Prakritim purusham chaiva, kshetram kshetragyam evacha, etad veditum ichchami, jnanam geyam cha keshava. O Krishna, what is Prakriti? What is Purusha? What is nature and what is consciousness or the soul? What is the field and what is the knower of the field? And what is knowledge and what is to be known? And I want to know these things. So 6 topics. Basically, these are the subjects discussed in the 13th chapter. So some say that this question has been inserted later on, so that the verses spoken by Sri Krishna, they become answers to Arjuna's question. That's why sometimes that verse is not counted. If you count that verse, then the Gita has 701 verses. So sometimes in many books that verse is omitted. It starts straight with Krishna's teaching. In some books, the verse is included, leading to 701 verses. In some books, cleverly, the verse is included but not numbered. So the first verse in 13th chapter is Krishna's teaching, but Arjuna's question is 0. So it starts there. No numbering done. What does Sri Krishna say? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam shariram kaunteya kshetram ityabhidhiyate etadyo vettitam prahu kshetrajya iti tadvidah. He says, O Arjuna, this body, this is the field. Know this to be the field. And the one who experiences this body from within, that is the knower of the field. So the experts in this subject, they think so, or they have told us so. That consider this body to be a field, and you, the dweller in the body, you are the knower of the field. What's he trying to do here? Here it is, the quest is, who am I or what am I? It's directed inwards. And in the quest for who am I, he says this body is a field. Now, our problem is not really with the external world. When I want to know what exactly am I know clearly that I am not these things. I am not this chair, I know that. I am not this hall, I know that. So this external, entire universe, the world is the field. But Krishna does not start with the world, he starts with the body. Because with the body we have a problem, an issue. Because sometimes we think, I am this body. When you ask, who are you? Point to yourself. Here, I am this. And somebody asks, what is this? This is I. Notice, what am I? This. What is this? I. It's mutual identification with the body. I am the body and the body is I. And sometimes we speak of my body or the body, just like the chair, the body. The body is not doing too well. So we have this slightly ambivalent, at least linguistically ambivalent relationship with the body. Practically we all the time more or less literally behave as if we are the body. So Krishna starts with the body. He says consider it a field. Just like you have a field, a farmer has a field and the farmer sows seeds in the field and gains a harvest. Similarly we have done karma and the results of the karma are experienced in the field. Whatever we have done in past lives, how do I know? What are the results? Look at your life. Look at your body and look at the life that you have had since birth and childhood till now. That gives us a good idea about what our past karma is. What's it like? Mostly mixed for most of us. Some people have it terrible, some people have it really good. Most of us, almost all of us, have a mixed deal. So it's a field. But then Krishna introduces very interesting and subtle insight here. He, instead of saying, that's you, he says, no, that's not you. That's the field, and you, the one who experiences this body, you are the knower of the field. Thereby creating a distinction, driving a wedge between the body and ourselves. I and the body are not literally the same. If they were exactly the same, he would not use two terms for it. He would not say field and knower of the field. The moment he says field and knower of the field, just as you stand in the field and you know the field and you are not the field, Krishna wants you to consider the body like that. And if we look a little deeper, that makes sense. See, look at that field out there. And I can see it. If I go there, I can touch the grass. I can smell the field. I can taste it. And so all the five senses, they operate on that field. It's an object. Similarly, quite amazingly actually, we never think about it. All the five senses equally well operate on this body. I can see this body. I can touch it. I can taste it. I can smell it. I can even hear it if my tummy is rumbling with hunger or something. So all the five senses, they reveal this body to me. The senses are right here and they operate on the body. I know this. The knower of this field is called the field knower, Kshetrajya. I know this. You know your body, just as you know anything else. Now, here is the principle in philosophy, that the knower and the known cannot be the same entity. There is no self-reflexivity. It's a grammatical rule, kartri karma virodha. It's like a knife cannot cut itself. The fruit cannot eat, or the coffee cannot drink itself. So the consumer and the consumed, they must be two different entities. The knower and the known must be two different entities. The agent and the thing you act upon, they must be two different entities. If I know there's something, it must be somehow, somehow I must be different from it. I, the knower of the body, though I'm right here, whatever I am, I must be something different from the body. This is the core insight on which we will operate for a while. So hold on to this. This is our operating principle. Hold on to this very clearly, that if I know something, that I must be different from it. I cannot exactly be that thing. I am not a thing. Subject and object are not literally the same thing. I am the subject which experiences an object. An object, this is an object. And it goes deeper. If you keep on applying this field, this insight, not only is the body the field, but then we know our thoughts. Right now, if you look inside, what is this guy talking about? It's nice here. These thoughts which are going on in the mind, we know these thoughts, do we not? And that's called introspection. When we look into our minds, we are aware of our thoughts. We are aware of our memories. We are aware of our sensations. We are aware of our desires, our likes and dislikes. All of this we are aware of in the mind. If we are aware of that, then this mind is also an object. Because you are aware of it. You are aware of it. And if somebody was a telepath, that telepath would be aware of your thoughts also. So it's an object. The mind and its contents are an object, also field. Why field? Because you know it. You are the knower of the field, and this field has two dimensions. One a physical dimension, this one. Another one a mental dimension, inside, first person, subjective. Now you see, this is quite radical, because it does violence to our normal way of thinking about ourselves. We think of ourselves as a mind. Actually, we really do not literally think of ourselves as flesh and blood and bones. We think of ourselves as persons embodied. Normally, common sense approach. A grown-up, an adult, thinking, sensitive person normally thinks of himself or herself as a body mind, as a person in a body. But now, Krishna is telling us in a very subtle way, he's thrown a bomb into our conception of ourselves. Whatever we thought was I, my thoughts, my ideas, my cherished desires, my private hurts and guilt and unhappiness, all of that, object, a thing like this, it's a thing. It's there, but I'm aware of it. If I'm aware of it, it's part of the field. It's not me, the knower of the field. And if you push further back, not the body, not even the mind. If I'm not aware of the body, you sit quietly and not aware of the external world, no sights, no sounds, no smell, no taste, touch. And then there are only the contents of the mind. You shut it down in absolute calmness, no thoughts, memories. Not even the thought of I am meditating or I am quiet. That also you drop. Absolute silence, blank. You come to a blank. You could. And that blank is also something you're experiencing. That peace, that quietness is also something that you're experiencing. That is an indication of what is in Vedanta called the Karana Sharira, the seed form of the mind. Sometimes in deep meditation and always in deep sleep, the mind goes into that seed form. You can simulate it by quietening the mind down completely, by shutting down sensory activity and quietening it. So even that is an object. Krishna's point is, you are aware of that too. Because you had that experience of quietness. You had that experience of silence. You had that experience of blankness. That quietness, silence, blankness is the causal state of the mind, Karana Sharira. The point here is, body, mind, and even the quiet state of the mind, all are kshetra, field. In Vedanta, they are called the three bodies. The physical body, Sthula Sharira. The subtle body, Sukshma Sharira, and the causal body, Karana Sharira. But we did not go into all those details. Krishna doesn't even mention that. What Sri Krishna says is, anything that you are aware of is a field. It's not you. Then what are you? If I'm not hands and feet and legs and a head, the physical body, if I'm not that, if I'm not thoughts, emotions, memories, personality, if I'm not that, what am I then? Well, one thing I know, I exist. And another thing I know, I am having experiences. That I cannot deny. This was the French philosopher Descartes' his argument, cogito ergo sum, that I exist because I think, therefore I exist. Because I am having experiences. The philosopher David Chalmers in New York University, he said that I would rephrase Descartes' insight. I would say, instead of saying I think, therefore I am, I would say I am conscious, therefore I am. And so one thing we know, we exist and we are conscious. This existence consciousness, in Sanskrit this is called Sat Chit. Sat Chit, existence consciousness. This is called the know, this is the real knower of the field. This is called the Sakshi, the witness consciousness. You can easily see why it's called the witness consciousness. Because it's like you're a witness of everything. Your entirety of your life, you're a witness. Witness in the sense of not looking out of a window and watching things. It's like illumining, like the sun shining and revealing everything in the world. You are this existence awareness which reveals everything in life. The Upanishad says, Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. That shining, everything else shines after it. By its light, everything here is lit up. You shining, everything else shines after you. Everything else means you shining, the mind shines with your light borrowed from you. The senses shine with the light borrowed from the mind. And the world is revealed by the mind and the senses lit up by you. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. By you shining, everything shines after you. By your light, everything here is lit up. It doesn't mean that you are suddenly radioactive and glowing in the dark or something like that. It's just a literal description of how things are. Right now, you're shining. You are aware of everything. Now, just a little detail here in order to avoid confusion. If you think a little deeply, you'll say, no, Swami, I'm not aware of everything. Just this little bit of the world, this beautiful facility, I'm aware of a section of it. I don't even know what's behind the wall. I don't know what's going on out there. I don't know what's there in this vast world and this even vaster universe. So I'm not aware of everything. No. Make a distinction between awareness and knowledge. In Sanskrit, between Sakshi and Pramata. Awareness and knowledge. We are aware of everything. Swami, are you crazy? Are you high? No, you're aware of everything, part of which is known, and the rest you're aware of it as the unknown. Right now, I'm aware of all of you, but I don't know what's behind me. And when I turn around, I know what's behind me. No, I don't know what's behind me now. So I'm aware of this as the known, and I'm aware of that as the unknown. Exactly like that. You're aware of the entire universe as the known and the unknown. The difference is, you, the consciousness, when you deploy instruments of knowledge, eyes, ears, sense organs, intellect, when you deploy sensory knowledge, when you deploy scientific knowledge, you begin to have increased the boundaries of your knowledge. What was previously unknown comes into the range of the known. That's all. But it was all within awareness. Anyway, that we can discuss later also. So we are consciousness. But two questions arise here. One question, or should arise. If the questions haven't arisen, I will give you the questions. The first question is, so I am consciousness, and here are all these people. So there must be, how many consciousnesses are there? Clearly there are so many bodies, there are so many fields. Yeah, there are so many fields, you can count them. And the minds are also quite clearly different. When you talk to a person, you see they have different opinions, different beliefs. So minds are different. Bodies are clearly different. So many bodies, many minds. How many consciousnesses? One or many? So that question may come. And then another question would be, Gita, it's religion. You haven't even mentioned God. This is also a house of God. So you haven't mentioned God. Where is God in all of this? Field or knower of the field? If God is out there, then God becomes part of the field. If God is in here, then God becomes the knower of the field. But I am the knower of the field, and I become God. So where is God in this equation? And both of these questions, Sri Krishna answers in a dramatic half a sentence in the next verse. One of the most dramatic, powerful, impactful verses in the entire Bhagavad Gita. He says, Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Kshetra kshetra gyayor jnanam yattad jnanam matam mama. He says, how many consciousnesses are there? And what is God? He says, in all these fields, there is one consciousness. One knower of the field. And I am that. I means God. He's the incarnation of God, so he says, I am that. God is the knower is the knower of the field in all fields. Implying thereby a very radical assertion, there is one consciousness. This is where Advaita Vedanta takes leave of Sankhya. Till now, what we talked about, not body, not mind, it's the field, I am consciousness. This is Sankhya philosophy, the oldest philosophy in the world. Kapila says that all the universe can be divided into two realities, matter and spirit, the universe and consciousness. It's not very difficult to do that. It's an intuitive feeling because all our knowledge is basically subject and object. Think about it. Everything that we do, everything is subject and object. And if you investigate what exactly is the subject, you'll end up with this position. That you end up with subject must be just awareness, because everything else is an object to that awareness. So whatever is an object is part of nature, is part of the universe, is part of matter, energy, space, time. That is called Prakriti, or the modifications of Prakriti in Sankhya. And consciousness, you, the knower of the field, you are called Purusha in Sankhya. But now we are moving beyond the limits of Sankhya, because Sankhya holds each body-mind has a separate consciousness. Your bodies are separate, your minds are separate, and indeed, at your deepest level, you are separate beings. You are different consciousnesses. But Advaita says, no. Consciousness is one. At the level of consciousness, there is a radical identity, complete oneness. And then there's a lot of discussion. The Sankhya's immediately say, how can you say that? That's crazy. You can't just stipulate it. Can you argue it out? Advaita Vedanta reverses that question. He says, why would you say there are many consciousnesses? I understand why you say there are many bodies. You just count them, many bodies. You can also understand why you say there are many minds. But many consciousnesses, why would you say that? What are your arguments for saying that there are many consciousnesses? And Sankhya has arguments. So Sankhya says, let me give you some sample arguments. You see that the arguments do not hold much water. You can easily dismiss them. For example, Sankhya would say that, if we were all one consciousness, then the birth of one would be the birth of all, and the death of somebody dies, everybody would die. But that's not true. Birth is birth of the body. Death is death of the body. It's not the birth of the consciousness or death of consciousness. Then the Sankhya says, it could well be that bodies are born and they die, and consciousness continues to be one. So Sankhya says, if you have all one consciousness, the problem would be if, sometimes you see some people are awake and some are sleeping. If you're all one consciousness, then if one person falls asleep, everybody would fall asleep. But no. Sleeping, waking, dreaming, these are all functions of the mind. The mind awakes. The mind dreams. The mind goes to sleep. Consciousness is distinct from the mind. We did that field and knower of the field. Where did we put the mind? In the field, not knower of the field. It's an activity of the mind, waking, dreaming, sleeping. And therefore, if one mind sleeps, others can be awake. There's no problem. Consciousness can still be one. In that sleeping mind, it illumines the sleeping mind. In the awake mind, it illumines the waking mind. In the dreaming mind, it illumines the dreams in that mind. Consciousness can be one light everywhere. No, the Sankhya says, if you say it's one consciousness, the problem is, if your guru gets knowledge, enlightened, then everybody will become enlightened. All the students will become enlightened, because they're all one consciousness. And that would be nice, but it doesn't happen. So we cannot be one consciousness. And again the same answer. Enlightenment, ignorance are all in the mind. In a classroom, when the professor is teaching physics or mathematics, I saw a huge chemistry building teaching chemistry. And the students don't know what he's going to teach, but at the end of the class they know. So the knowledge in the mind of the professor has been transferred to the student's mind. And the mind which was ignorant is now knowledgeable. Consciousness can still be the same. The same consciousness which saw the ignorant mind now illumines the knowledgeable mind. So even spiritual enlightenment is still in the mind. It's not that the Atman requires enlightenment. So in this way, the Advaitin deals. I think 5 major arguments are there, but you can see in principle how to deal with these arguments. So there is no good reason for thinking consciousness is many. I think it was Heisenberg who said, consciousness is that single, is that singular for which there is no plural. Schrodinger said that. So Schrodinger said consciousness is that singular for which there is no plural. And we can see long ago the Sankhyans and the Advaitins have argued it out. So the Advaitins reject the Bahupurushavada of the Sankhyains. The Sankhyains consider many consciousnesses. Advaitins say that there is one consciousness. And it has a lot of implications. Even right now, if you're interested in consciousness studies, one popular philosophy of consciousness is called panpsychism. It's a revival of an old idea which was there in Eastern and Western philosophies both. David Chalmers has revived it now. He is gunning for that consciousness is not an emergent property of activities in the brain and nervous system, but it's a fundamental reality of the universe. Why? What do you do in physics? That's his argument. He has a TED talk about this now. It's a big issue. He says, what do you do in physics, for example, if you have a force which you cannot explain in terms of other forces? Then you consider it to be a fundamental force in the universe. Strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, gravitation, things like that. So they cannot be reduced to anything else. They're still trying to get a unified theory, but these are the fundamentals. Similarly, we cannot reduce consciousness to brain activities. We're trying, but we haven't been able to. It may be time, I'm quoting David Chalmers here, to what he says, entertain a crazy idea. What is the crazy idea? That consciousness may be a fundamental reality. It may not be reducible to brain and bodily processes. So, Sankhyans got it thousands of years ago. Second crazy idea, David Chalmers says, that Sankhyans and Advaitins differ here, that consciousness may be one reality. May not be divisible. They call it the divisibility problem in panpsychism. It's solved by this debate between Advaita and Sankhya. So one consciousness in all beings, and this one consciousness in all beings is the definition of God in Vedanta. What is God in Vedanta? It is that one consciousness. See, what are we in Vedanta? The Jiva. The same consciousness limited by one causal body, one subtle body, and one physical body. And when I use causal body, subtle body, physical body, at no point think that it's something esoteric, something ancient Indian philosophers are talking about. It's just a direct description of what we are experiencing right now. It's very phenomenological. We experience a physical body. What about the subtle body? You are experiencing it right now. You close your eyes and look inwards, you will find thoughts, feelings, emotions. Inwards, I don't mean physical inwards. If you probe it inwards, physically inwards, you will find only more body, flesh and blood and bones. Inwards in your experience, you will find thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas. That's the subtle body. And in deep sleep, what you experience is the causal body. So I am that unlimited single consciousness, but apparently limited by one physical body, one subtle body, and one causal body. It's like that one vast sky out there, one vast sky. But if you look at it through these windows, you will see that it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rectangles. The sky has not been divided into rectangles. The rectangles are the windows. Similarly, it's not that consciousness is divided into many people. It's just that the bodies are many, and the subtle bodies are many, and the causal bodies are many, and consciousness appears to be many. Krishna says, Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu.
You speak of the Russian dolls, is it?
Here is Russian doll.
Yeah.
So you keep on opening, you go inside, and it's not that you will find one consciousness in there. You remove the physical body, remove the subtle body, remove the causal body, and then one little consciousness will be sitting there. Not like that. It's not that if you remove that glass pane, you will find a rectangular section of sky floating around there. Sky is not a rectangular section. Sky is completely undivided and one, but appears to be divided. Imagine each of those rectangles was a separate subtle body, separate mind. Then it seems that it has divided the sky into 7 sections. Similarly, thousands and millions of minds as if dividing consciousness into thousands and millions of consciousnesses. No, it's not like that. Krishna says, Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu vibhaktam vivacha sthitam. Undivided in all these myriad beings, consciousness exists as one, appearing to be divided. Vibhaktam iva, as if divided, but not divided in reality. Sky is as if divided into 7 rectangular skies, but not divided actually. So this one undivided reality everywhere, and then one more final touch and I'm done. What is implied there? Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Ishvara. 3 things. See, Kshetra, Kshetrajnayor Jnanam, it includes Ishvara also. Shankaracharya in his commentary adds that. By the way, if those of you are interested, Adi Shankaracharya, he has written a beautiful commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and the longest commentary in the whole Bhagavad Gita for any verse is for this verse. Kshetrajnam chapimam viddhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. For this verse, for this just one line, he has written page after page, far longer than for any other verse in the whole Bhagavad Gita. An extraordinary commentary. There he really establishes non-duality, the non-duality of consciousness. So you will notice that it is not yet non-duality. Before this, I am separate and you are all separate from me. Now what did we do? We put this body into that field, mind is also field, but I am consciousness. And then we said consciousness is one. But then the fields are still there. There's so many bodies, so many minds, so much, this variety of the universe from the quark to the quasar, there are billions of entities. How is it non-dual? Non-dual means not two. So the next step would be, since Ishvara, God, is this one consciousness in all beings, it follows very easily in Vedanta. I mean, if you see the chapters 7 to 12 which have been described, it is God alone who appears as this entire universe. So if God is the consciousness in all of us, the entire universe is an appearance to that consciousness, in that consciousness, not distinguishable from that consciousness. I'll repeat it. 3 steps. The universe appears to you, the consciousness. And that, I think we can all get on board with that. Yeah, it appears to me. So, next step. It appears in you, the consciousness. Big step. I won't argue it out now. It can be argued out very easily. But it appears in you, the consciousness. It's not outside you. Third step. Even more dramatic. It is nothing but you, the consciousness. Is consciousness appearing to itself as its own object. It is the self appearing to itself as the other. There is no independent other. Now you will notice we have reversed what we started with. I said the field and the field knower must be different. The subject and object must be different. Now I am saying the object cannot be anything other than the subject. It is true that the subject, consciousness, is different from the object. But it's not true, Advaita says, that the object is different from consciousness. It is true that whatever you see in your dreams, you are different from whatever you see in the dreams, because you can exist without them. They will disappear the moment you wake up. The people you saw in the dream, the places you saw in the dream, the moment you wake up, it's gone. They cannot exist if you don't dream. But you can exist without the dream objects. You are separate from the dream objects, but the dream objects and the people in the dream are not separate from you. The ocean, water is separate from the waves. What do I mean by that? Water can be in a glass, water can be up there as water vapor, it can be in the ocean, also in the waves. But the waves cannot exist apart from the water. Water can exist without being a wave, but wave cannot exist without being water. Similarly, The entire universe. You exist as consciousness. You are consciousness. The universe depends on you. It borrows existence from you. This is the grand Advaitic conception of Jagat Mithyatva, the falsity, the illusoriness of the universe. The universe appears as a magical presentation in you, the consciousness. Since it is not a distinct, countable second apart from you. What I mean by this is, when you look at the ocean there, water and 10,000 waves in the ocean. If you count the waves, 10,000, thousands and thousands of waves. But if you count water, then you cannot count the waves apart from the water. You can't say wave and then water. If you say water, then all the waves are already counted. The wave is not a countable second apart from the water. The universe is not a countable second apart from you, the consciousness. No countable second apart from you, the consciousness. Then you, the consciousness, are not two. Non-dual. Advaita. I had read that in Bangalore, about 30-40 years ago, there was a debate between the dualists and the non-dualists, Advaitins and Dvaitins, about this very Kshetragyam Jabimam Vidhi Sarva Kshetreshu Bharata. The dualists have a different interpretation and the non-dualists have a different interpretation, which I gave you just now. Which is right? So in India, these things are traditionally settled by debates between scholars and monks and all. So there was a debate, and a very great traditional scholar of Advaita Vedanta monk, his name was Kashikananda, Swami Kashi. He's living in Mumbai. He's originally from Kerala. He passed away. No, he just passed away. He passed away a few years ago. I read in his book, he was invited to debate from the Advaitic point of view, non-dual point of view. And there was a great scholar of Madhva Vedanta, dualistic Vedanta. So they had a debate in Bangalore. Now the debate, how it ended was, the two debaters went at it, but what happened was the audience on both sides, one the dualists and the non-dualists sitting on two sides of the hall, it ended up with their two sides throwing chairs at each other across the area. They got so excited and worked up, they started fighting among each other and it dissolved in chaos. And then Swami Kashikananda said, I wrote to the organizers, who won the debate? They never wrote back to me. So I take it that I have won. And then I am writing this book. He wrote a book, Advaita Vaijayanti Mala. So from that book I got this. This is very half a sentence. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. So don't throw chairs. Alright, that's all I wanted to say. Very good. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
There is a web question.
This is a web question.
Charlie is asking Charles Feldman, do we know the mind with the mind?
Do we know the mind with the mind? Yes and no. We know the mind with the mind when that's what's introspection. But ultimately we know everything with consciousness only. Even the mind is known because there is consciousness. Without consciousness, even the mind wouldn't be able to know anything. We know the external world because, how do we know anything in Vedantic epistemology? Consciousness illumines the mind. We are aware of the contents of the mind. The mind is connected to the sensory system. So the sensory system, we see, hear, smell, taste, touch the world. And all of this is, we are getting experiences, knowledge because of consciousness. What about the contents of the mind? Same consciousness, illumining the mind. We turn the mind inwards, introspect, we know the mind. So is the mind knowing the mind? Yes, but not without consciousness. And what knows the mind directly? It's consciousness alone. Knows means illumines the mind or reveals the mind. Question? Yes.
Maharaj, the question is, when we sleep and we go into so-called a blank state, means the mind shuts down. The next morning you wake up and you realize actually that you are blank kind of stuff. That awareness actually isn't a process through the mind itself again?
Yes. It's processed through the mind. So when we wake up and we reflect back upon our experience, we say, I slept happily, I did not know anything. Now there is a component of mind in that also. It's not that just consciousness was there in a blankness. This is discussed in a book called Vedanta Sara. The Vedantins have gone into it. They say, yes, it's true, there must be some component of memory involved there. But memory was not functioning because mind was asleep. So the exact phrase used is, Ati sukshma bhi ajnana vritti bhi. Normally, in our day-to-day experiences, After this, we will have a memory of the experience we had here on the Yukon campus. What will happen is it has left traces in the mind. The mind recovers those traces. And then I remember being there. I remember hearing this. This is how memory functions. Now, this is not the way we recall deep sleep. So how is that? How is the experience of deep sleep retained? Not in our normal mind. It's retained in the seed state of the mind, in ajnana, in ignorance, which is called the seed state of the mind. How can that be? Because that's dynamic. If you have to go, here, this is borrowed from Sankhyan cosmology. Ajnana or Prakriti has three components, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, and they are in continuous movement, continuous change. Anything that is changing, it can be used to record something. So, Ajnana is changing. Because the movements of the mind are called Sukshma Vritti, subtle modifications of the mind. That's why modifications of something even deeper than the mind, subtler than the mind, are called extremely subtle modifications. So, Ati Sukshma Vi Ajnana Vritti. Anyway, that's a complicated way of saying what the Advaitins have done is a little bit of back calculation and made the accounts fit, balance. All right.
Another web question here. Does consciousness means, she's asking part in Hindi, does consciousness means zinda hone ka ehsas?
Yes, very good. The leading neuroscientist today, one of them, Christoph Koch, he was the chief scientist of the Paul Allen Brain Institute. So his latest book is called The Feeling of Life Itself, Zinda Hone Ka Ehsas. So he describes consciousness as Zinda Hone Ka Ehsas, the feeling of life itself. But I'll add something subtle here. When you say the feeling of life itself, it feels like something to be alive, to see, hear, smell, taste, touch, to think, enjoy, suffer. This is the feeling of life, right? So this is the feeling of life itself. But notice, here there's always an objective component. It feels like something to see the green, to taste the coffee, to feel the temperature. All of these, the green, coffee, temperature, these are all objective components. So the experience of life itself requires kshetra and kshetrajna, field and knower of the field. Consciousness by itself, isolated by itself, does not have the feeling of life itself. So now the next question would be, so consciousness is dependent on the material universe for experience? The field, knower of the field is dependent on the field for experience? It seems so. That's the Sankhya philosophy, interaction of consciousness and nature. But Advaita says it's the other way around. It is the material nature which is dependent on you, both for existence and for revelation, satta spurana, existence and illumination. It depends on you. Without you, no material universe. It's like saying, so we depend on the dream objects for having a dream? No, the dream objects depend on you for their existence. Similarly, the universe depends on consciousness for its existence. It's a very radical way of looking at it. Notice the difference between this and our mainstream materialist paradigm. The mainstream materialist paradigm says consciousness is a byproduct of matter, of this physical universe. You are epiphenomenon. Like a flame burns there, candle burns and the flame is produced light and heat. Similarly, biochemical processes are going on in our brains, and what we think of ourselves, we are like that light and heat generated byproduct, epiphenomenon. Advaita Vedanta reverses it. It says matter itself is an appearance in consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental, matter is an appearance. Modern mainstream science would say matter is real, consciousness is a byproduct. This is the difference. But the difference is beginning to be bridged in many ways. Yes.
So my question is that it's we can understand by conversation and reading and lectures like this that we're not the body, we're not the mind, we're not the personality. But how do you convert that mental understanding to an experience if we are really consciousness?
Right. How do you convert that mental understanding into experience? Krishna knows this, so the next thing he's going to talk about is that. He's going to give you 20 practices. How do you convert this into a living experience? But I would be failing in my duty if I did not point out the core truth. You see, how do I convert this thing that I am consciousness, not body-mind? And the benefits of that are tremendous, because if I'm body-mind, then every problem of the body-mind is my problem. But if I'm consciousness, consciousness itself doesn't have a problem. I'm overweight. Is consciousness overweight? No. You're not being escapist. Body may be overweight and you may have to deal with it. But consciousness, you are not overweight. I'm so depressed. Is consciousness depressed or mind depressed? Mind is depressed. Consciousness illumining the non-depressed happy mind, and consciousness is revealing the depressed unhappy mind. So there are great benefits of seeing yourself as consciousness, of recognizing this. However, how do you make it, as you said, a living experience? How do I convert it into living experience? You know what the real answer to that is? It's an incredible answer. The real answer is it's already a living experience. You don't have to do anything to convert it into a living experience. Now that is not an answer we are ready to accept. Why? Because this living experience which we have, we find it profoundly dissatisfactory. You say, this is it. Advaita Vedanta would say, this is it. The Jivan Mukta here, the Brahmagyani would say, this is Brahman here. I have had that experience. Ram Maharaj, Swami Mokshadhara, once told me, Advaita, this is it. And there was actually a tree outside the window at that time. I pointed to it and said, this tree, that's Brahman. And he said, Theek ta hai, not exactly. And then he said, Theek ache, let it be, it will happen later. Now, what does a non-dualist mean by that? It's like, what's your name? Ruchi. So you are here. Right now I know your Ruchi. Moment earlier I was looking at you, but I did not know your Ruchi. Now that I know your Ruchi, has my experience changed? Am I seeing something different, or is my knowledge different? Your knowledge is different. I'm not seeing a different person. But now I know, oh, this is Ruchi. Now even that will not be very satisfactory for us. We just say, oh, this is my life, now you're calling it Brahman. What good did it do to me? No, that's not what is meant. So yes, practically there remains a problem. If you are not satisfied by that, if only a Jivan Mukta would understand this statement, that here is Brahman. See, Vivekananda says, don't seek it, see it, here is Brahman. You're sitting in the courtyard in Belur Math and talking to people who had gathered around him to ask questions about Vedanta. And Vivekananda says, here is Brahman, see it. Don't seek it, see it. And because it is an impulse from a fully realized and very powerful, see, people can be enlightened, but all cannot be equally powerful. Some are more powerful than others. Shakti Vishesh, Sri Ramakrishna says. Vivekananda was one of the most powerful manifestations of enlightenment in our age. So when he says, here is Brahman, see it, those who were gathered around him, they were immediately thrown, there's a description, thrown into a kind of ecstatic state, into a meditative state. At least there was a deep quietness which reigned. And most incredibly, I had read somewhere, Baburam Maharaj, Swami Premananda, direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, he was coming down from the old temple there. He used to, after the worship of Sri Ramakrishna was over, he would take the thali of the worship like this. He would go to the Ganga and do worship there. So he was coming down. And he was not part of the conversation. He just heard. See, Brahman, here is Brahman, see. And he went into samadhi. He stood there, one foot in front of the other, and he went into samadhi. The impulse given by Vivekananda and a mind like Premananda's, which is already highly purified and prepared. Just one suggestion can throw it into samadhi. After some time, Vivekananda just muttered, Baburama, go. And then he started walking again. So, this is it. But I am not Vivekananda, I can't plunge you into that. I can't plunge myself into it, so far less anybody else.
Example like that.
Which one?
In Inspired Talks also this phrase comes.
Yes.
Don't seek, see it.
Don't seek, see it. Inspired Talks, he was in that mood. I'm sure he would throw people into that state once in a while. People could experience it. All right.
There's one more question here.
No, let me finish this.
Okay.
This is an important question. Now, all this is great. If I don't understand the direct instruction, this is it, I'm liable to misunderstand it. You're just calling my day-to-day life, quotidian life, you're calling it Brahman. That's no use to me. Or, if you do not have that power to push a person into the direct living experience of Brahman right now. In Kashmiri Shaivism, this is called Shaktipat. You don't have that power now. Then what do? Then you fall back upon spiritual practice. And Sri Krishna gives 20 practices. He says, you want to convert this, what I've taught you now, into a living reality? Is this. Amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa kshantirajyavam acharyopasanam shaucham sthiryam atma vinigraha indriyartheshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam asaktiranabhishvanga putradara viharishu nityam cha samachittatvam ishtanishtopapatishu mai chananya yogena bhaktirabhyabhicharini viviktadesha sevitvam aratirjana sansadi adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam etad jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yadatonyatha. Shankaracharya comments there, these 20 practices, these Krishna calls that this is knowledge. Because if you practice these, develop these, bring these into our lives, then the knowledge which we heard now, it seems to be intellectual, I begin to get it, that will become a living reality. Because it's already a living reality, it just removes the ignorance that exists. If we do the opposite, it puts on more layers of ignorance, and then this teaching will, at best it will seem like a nice philosophy which I've got, but it doesn't make any difference. At worst, I will just not get it. What are they talking about? It's just the layers of ignorance that thick upon us. 20 practices. Good. The lady there.
What are the 20 practices?
He just narrated
Yeah.
those.
Bhagavad Gita.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
What did all that mean?
Oh, that's what he asked. What are the 20 practices?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll have to translate them.
Yeah.
And that's in the Bhagavad Gita from verses 13th chapter, verses 7 to 11, I think. So it means, let me see, amanitvam adambhitvam. Amanitvam means humility, but all of those are very deep. Unpretentiousness, the control of the senses, forgiveness for others. So all of what you might consider virtues. Those practices. But that's just a preliminary look into it. It's deep, it goes deeper. Let me give you one example and stop there. So the first thing he says, amanitvam. Literally it would mean, English if you translate it would mean humility. Lack of arrogance. But how is that connected to all this high non-dual philosophy? It seems like an ordinary teaching of, like be moral, be a good person, that's all. But there's a deep connection. Mani. Mani means a person who is proud or arrogant. We become mani, that means proud or arrogant of what? I am proud of my wealth, my learning, my success, my youth, my looks, my Facebook likes. These are what I'm proud of. These are my sampada, my resources. This is my identity in life. This is what's great about my life. And I build my pride and arrogance on that. From an Advaitic perspective, the non-dualistic perspective, the problem is, whatever is mani, the word mana means measure. Whatever is measurable is also limited. How do you measure something? You cut something into pieces, so many kilograms or pounds, so many miles, like that, so much or so less. All of it is limited. The moment you do that and identify with that, you cannot be unlimited. You cannot be the infinite Brahman. You cannot be the unlimited consciousness. You can measure the sky in that rectangle. But that's an illusion. You're not measuring the sky, you're measuring the rectangle. Similarly, so all of these practices which Krishna tells us, They'll sound like ordinary moral practices which are very good. They're necessary. But they are also deeply connected to non-duality. 20 practices. All right, let's cut off the field. We have run out of time, I think.
No, we still have some time.
Okay.
It is, please explain more. Ajnanam Vyadatonyatha.
Yes. So, at the end, Krishna says, this is knowledge, these 20 practices. But the opposite of each one of them is ignorance. So, if I do not practice humility and I am arrogant or proud, I am justifiably proud of my accomplishments. That's ignorance. Why? That ties me to something in the world and the body and the mind. And these are diametrically opposite. I am not the field. I am the knower of the field. I am consciousness, not mind, not body. And the moment I associate with something that's to do with the body or the mind, then you can see they are just opposite. It puts on more layers of ignorance over the existing ignorance. The next one, you see how it's connected? Adambhitva. It's translated as lack of pretense or unpretentiousness. So what is pretentiousness? The opposite. Ignorance. Dambha is pretentiousness. What does it do? See, arrogance or pride could be justifiable. I am actually successful and rich and, good looking and popular, and so I'm proud of it. But it goes one step further. To be proud of what one is not, to show what one is not. Once I am proud of being rich, I would always like to show that I'm richer than I am actually. The person, it doesn't stay at that level. It's always trying to project. You see that in social media. You see that among wealthy people. Often, not always. So anybody who's proud of wealth would also like to be seen as wealthier than he is. If I'm proud of my learning, I would like to be known as really learned. I know more than you. I'd like to show that. That is called dambha. Dambha means pretentiousness. Now, why is that bad? Of course, it's bad from a spiritual perspective, but from a non-dualistic perspective, philosophically, why is that bad? Dambha is equal to another Sanskrit term, vivarta, is equal to maya. Literally, to show something as what it is not. The very definition of illusion in Vedanta. To see what is not there. The snake is not there, it's a rope. I see it as a snake. The technical term for that is vivarta in Sanskrit, in Vedanta. An appearance of what is not there. And the corresponding psychological thing is pretentiousness. You see, it's deeply connected to Maya. I cannot have both together. I am Brahman and I am also in the midst of illusion and I am holding on to illusion as myself. You see, in each of these practices can be seen as how one side of it is ignorance and the other side of it is helpful for knowledge.
What is the other question?
Or can we cut
There is
the...
one question.
Okay, so Shubha has a question about cosmic mind and consciousness. Can Swamiji elaborate on this?
What's the question?
Difference between cosmic minds and consciousness.
Yeah, there's the same difference as between our individual mind and consciousness. See, what the contents of my mind, you're aware of it. Thoughts, feelings, emotions. And the idea is that all our minds are also linked. Just as we are, when I say we are all different bodies, it's not literally true. We are part of an ocean of matter here. There's some concentrated matter here, which is this body. There's some concentrated matter there, is that body. In between, there is less matter. There's not even a vacuum here. So it's really an ocean of matter. Similarly, it's an ocean of mind. So when you take all minds linked together, joined together as a cosmic mind, like the World Wide Web, there is a concept in Vedanta called Hiranyagarbha. What is Hiranyagarbha? Consciousness plus this cosmic mind. Imagine all our minds, all 7 billion of us, plus all animals, all beings with minds, all of it linked together into one enormous mind. And you are the consciousness behind it. It's your mind, you're supposed to say. That's called cosmic mind, Hiranyagarbha. So that's consciousness plus the cosmic mind, the entire linked mind. Still, consciousness is distinct from it. Yeah. Let's stop here.
So can I ask one?
Yeah, we'll do that informally. You can
Sure.
just stop there, cut the feed.
Okay.
Stop.
Okay, let me just conclude.
Yes.
Yes, you can sit and sip coffee, no problem.
Yes.
You want to speak into the microphone, Maharaj?
It's microphone.
Okay.
Because they can hear them.
Coffee is cold.
It's
Please
still warm.
scold them.
Coffee is cold.
Oh, coffee is cold.
It's the matter of
Next.
Yes, at the same price you are getting cold coffee. Restaurant is actually costly. So, dear Sarvapriyananda, it was a wonderful exposition in a short time. You have explained these verses. One of these verses, like he said that Shankaracharya has written pages after page commentary, and it is a great philosophical treasure. That commentary on that second verse of the 13th chapter, and he gave it at our level where we can actually appreciate, understand, and absorb. So here we are closing this session. Next part is still not available to the online listeners. That is the lunch, Yeah, it is still not available for. They can have it at wherever they are, but not here. And next meeting will be on October 9th, Sunday, October 9th, and that will be the Durga Puja. Here there will be Durga Puja, and we will have also the discussion will be on Durga Saptashati Chandi. So you are all welcome to join that. So thank you very much.
That's happening where? Location?
Same location. Same location. The location has already been secured. So because every time when I see what dates are available for me, first I have to ask if this space is available at that time or date or not, because this is the university's Hillel Center, Jewish Center, and so many times they have their own programs. So, and it is not available there for our meeting. So, we have already checked that, and so 9th of October, we will have it at not 10 o'clock but 10:30. So from 10:30 onwards up to about 12:30, it will go on. It will be a little elaborate worship, being the Durga Puja day, and then we will have discussion topic, not exactly on Bhagavad Gita, but a similar very popular text, Durga Saptashati or Chandi. So thank you very much. Let us say Brahmarpanam, the grace. Om Brahmarpanam, Brahmavir, Brahmagnam, Brahmanaputam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samahina.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Are you feeling tired?
No.
Standing that long?
No.